Where's everyone going? Bingo?
It's hard to believe that we've come this far. The first time I made a video on Resident Evil, we'd only just gotten the reveal trailer for Resident Evil 2's remake, and now, 4 years later, fans have Resident Evil 4 Remake in their hands. Crazy to think about, huh? With this retrospective series, my goal is to look back at the remakes we've gotten so far, see what they did right, what they did wrong, and just for fun, decide which one I like better. And what better way to start than at the start? This game is a cultural landmark. It revived the zombie genre. It invented survival horror. Quite a few incredible films and games would never have existed had it not been for Capcom striking gold. Looking back on it all the way up here in the 2020s, it's pretty easy to mock the chunky graphics, chunkier voice acting, and... But hey, even if you think that way, it was still good enough to pave the way a second time by getting a remake. It opened Capcom up to the idea of fully reimagining the first few games, and judging by the success of the Racoon Trilogy, I'd say this first one did its job well. This surprising commercial flop is considered by some to be the absolute best remake the series has to offer, improving on its predecessor in literally every way possible. That being said, there's still gotta be some fighting chance for this old dog, right? As you might be aware, I'm a sucker for the classic titles, but we'll try our best to give both games their fair shake in this episode of Topic Change. What people refer to as tank controls were practically birthed in this first installment, and reaction was understandably a little mixed. Having to control your character in this way was so incredibly foreign, and yet it fit in perfectly with the game being so terribly gripping. Chris doesn't want to walk down this hallway any more than I do, and he's apparently fumbling about just as much as I am. Unlike the future games in this retrospective, Resident Evil Remake decided to keep entirely faithful to the original fixed camera style, and it paid off wonderfully. I think in a world where tank controls hadn't left the cultural sphere so early, this game would have been looked to as one of the pioneers of the evolution of the style. It's nothing amazing by modern standards, sure, but it feels a fair touch smoother than even Resident Evil 4 would manage, and that wasn't due for 3 more years. You can tell a lot of care went into refining the movement, while also strictly keeping to the style of control. Maybe I'm romanticizing it just a little, but if you have a copy of Resident Evil Remake and, say, Resident Evil 5, try running around for a bit. I guarantee you'll feel more in control in the mansion. Otherwise, the rest of the gameplay is pretty standard for a Resident Evil title, though I suppose being the first entry, it was pretty fresh ground at the time. You trek through foreign and infected corridors, finding gear and clues to help you solve the mystery of the mansion. One thing I think both games do really well is keep an unease over you pretty consistently. Unless you've played this game a dozen or so times, you can never really shake the feeling of anxiety. Zombies are incredibly tough in both versions, with their most notable trait being their sturdy footing. In later titles, they added the chance for zombies to stagger or fall over when you hit them in quick succession, which in my opinion was a positive change, but its exclusion here ups their power that little bit. You as a player know that Leon can eventually cause this guy to tumble over. 3 or 4 shots usually let you slip by in a pinch, but here though, you better be ready to pour down the bullets, because these guys are not pushovers. That being said, they can be pretty simple to deal with once you get your hands on some decent weapons, or at least a sense of your bearings. Sometimes they awkwardly and almost seemingly intentionally mush their faces into nearby walls so you can slip by. This isn't a problem in the remake, but instead they're given a weird, kind of short lunge if you get too close. It's not the easiest thing in the world to dodge, and large groups still cause issues of course, but generally speaking, once you get the timing down, you can kind of wiggle through most high traffic areas. As for the other enemies in the game, they can range from incredibly powerful to surprisingly inefficient. Cerberus, the zombie dogs, are an excellent example of a rather potent opponent. Compared to the zombies, it really feels like they're just as ferocious as the opening cutscene makes them out to be. Hunters are another great example. Being one of the staple monsters from the franchise, their superb speed and leaping strikes make them a deadly foe, and a welcome surprise for your return trek to the mansion. The giant spiders, though, despite being a repeat appearance in almost every classic game, they have pretty consistently been pushovers. Slow attacks, a small chance to apply poison to you on hit, I don't know, I usually just run by them.
What? Oh no! Sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
Okay. Let's just clear the air first. Yes, the first Resident Evil has terrible voice acting. Yes, the story isn't groundbreaking, but I don't know, I kinda liked it. While it isn't the most unique plot out there, I think its simplicity lent itself well to the setting it was building. Most of the intense lore is delivered in crumbs, either sprinkled through files or mentioned posthumously. This is one positive trend I can note for the RE series, at least when it started anyways. Unlike games like Metal Gear or Kingdom Hearts, Resident Evil kept itself on the straight and narrow. There's zombies, a weird place to escape, maybe a traitor or something, bing bang boom, you escape. All the extra stuff is just in the corner. Did you want to know that the lizard things are called hunters? Well, here's this little file that names the monster. They didn't go too overboard with extra files in the first game, as most of them serve to contextualize the puzzles, which in itself adds that additional lore, but the idea is definitely there. The Guardhouse Diary is a world-building file that lives in infamy, for example. Stuff like this is in a weird place for me though. There's only so many ways one can convey information to the player without being a little too upfront. Having a character explain a plot detail in excess can be a little heavy-handed, if not downright exhausting. But how much better is leaving this kind of content to text files? I can't quite provide an answer to this because I'm not the smartest kid on the block, but I suppose game developers haven't been able to figure it out either, because diaries, scientist logs, and other assorted clues are scattered around quite a few game worlds. I suppose if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Files are all well and good, but let's get back on track. What is the story exactly? You are a member of STARS, a special task force of the Raccoon City Police Department. After a string of strange murders in and around town, the Bravo team is sent into nearby mountain ranges to investigate, only for their helicopter to crash land. You and the rest of Alpha Team are sent to check in, and come face to face with... What follows is a short chase sequence which leads to an eerily out-of-place mansion in the middle of the woods. The team barges through the door. The crew split up thanks to the chaos. Your choice of playing either Jill or Chris changes whom succeeds in making it to the foyer. Either Chris, Wesker, and Jill, or Wesker, Jill, and Barry. From here, the story diverges. Either Chris or Jill explore the mansion, finding clues, keys, and many a monster along the way. Due to the fact that the future games have canonized the events of both stories, with all of the main cast returning in some form or another, it's hard to say which one is the true story. In truth, I don't think it's possible to get it all from just one run. A bit of a shame, but it is what it is. As I touched on a few moments ago, the story can be a bit shallow at times due to extra information being hidden in diaries and notes. There are large swaths of time where you're getting no new information at all, especially on a first playthrough where the layout of the building is still foreign to you. It can really feel like you've made absolutely no progress for ages, at least in terms of uncovering the plot. But when it does get started, some of the cutscenes can feel pretty samey, especially as Jill, who gets a lot more of them front-loaded.
Jill! Don't scare me.
That's what I was going to say.
But despite all that, I sincerely think the game's story has this chilling atmosphere to it. If you let yourself relax and just ignore the crummy dialogue in the original release, you can really get invested. I imagine for players in '96, this feeling was probably compounded, considering how soon after the console's release this game debuted. The fact that it could take so much effort to learn the tiniest scrap of info, with even your escape route being a mystery until the final hours, it really elevates the feeling of claustrophobia in a unique way that not many other games can capture. Unlike the remakes of the future, Resident Evil 1's remake decided to stay incredibly faithful to the original in this regard. For the most part, the story is near identical, save for an updated script and the added subplot involving Lisa Trevor, one of the experiments who'd gone rogue. It gives the clunky cutscenes a nice coat of fresh paint, and although the dialogue is definitely still a little bit stilted, it's a much needed improvement.
You gotta love Barry. He must really be afraid of Umbrella.
You and Umbrella took his family, you bastard. Oh!
Considering the game came out only 6 years later, it's really astonishing just how much more life is breathed into some of these plot elements. Stuff like Richard, who I didn't even mention, goes from a single cutscene goober who dies from
Terrible demons. Ouch!
to an ally that can save you later in the plot. I could probably go on a bit more about minute details, like how the multiple endings can help enhance replayability, especially for those who played the title at launch, but as silly as this sounds, I don't think I want to spoil the story for those who haven't actually played it. Maybe one day I'll dive into further plot points, but for now, I'll have any story-related content for the later videos in the series. Claustrophobia, helplessness. Those feelings are washed over you when you play it the first time. And one of the key factors to add to that creeping dread is the music. Masami Ueda's chilling soundtrack breathes life into the desolate hallways and winding corridors of this abandoned mansion, and eventually its lower levels and secret pathways. Something about this OST just hits the mark perfectly. I probably won't touch on it much in the future videos of the series, but it really sells just how deadly this place can be with each carefully placed stroke of a key or long, droning string. Atmospheric sounds or nice graphical quality is one thing, but to really experience the evocative nature of an experience, you need the depth of the soundtrack. If the composer nails the feeling, it could suck you in instantaneously. But for some fans of the original game, they didn't get to hear this pulse-pounding, skin-paling sound. No, instead, players with the DualShock Edition got the alternate soundtrack. And of course, its infamy has largely overshadowed the classic OST. Beeps and boops, farting instruments and improper placement for songs, a grating and depressing alteration. And for most people, it's the only way they've ever experienced a game. Being the latest release, as well as the only available release on digital storefronts, it puts a black mark on the title that has soured the mind of many a player over the years. On the flip side, the remake thankfully decided to lift the original soundtrack, with some fresh takes on the old classics, although it would have been pretty funny to hear the basement theme in a new sound font. This is one place where I think the remake seriously excels. Halls feel lived in yet abandoned. The outer gardens and yards feel treacherous and untamed. The lab has an air of disuse and maliciousness. Room layouts in the '96 release had an ominous air to them, sure, but they had a flatness. Rooms weren't decorated as well, or sometimes not at all. The best way I can put it is this. RE1 Spencer Mansion felt like a showroom, a mansion designed to look normal on the outer layers, but the lack of lividness reveals the truth that something is amiss. Remake Spencer Mansion feels like Spencer's Mansion. It feels like an eccentric freak lived here, who liked to make all of his keys hidden behind puzzles and stuff. All I know is, I'd hate to be the scientist who worked here when you need to take a bathroom break. You know how many items you had to shuffle around just to get to any one toilet in the dorms, let alone the mansion proper? Okay, so now that we've talked it over, what's the decision? Normally I'd be a bit more lenient, but unfortunately I think Remake is the dominant force here. It's the same game, sure, but that's the point. It improved on itself in just about every way possible, and then some. This isn't to say that the original is bad, just a little obsolete. If you're a new fan coming into the series for the first time thanks to, say, Resident Evil 4, I'd probably give the RE1 Remake a try before swinging back to the OG. But don't be afraid to give it a shot either way, it's still one of my favorite games. This is as simple as comparing a 9 out of 10 game to a 10 out of 10 game. Hey there. I know it's been a while since the last time we talked. Funny how the last video I posted with a similar style was also about Resident Evil. I wanted to avoid that, given that the channel is called Topic Change, but I love the series a lot, so why avoid it? This series will be a 3-parter for now, reviewing the Racoon Trilogy as I like to call it, but if you want to hear more opinions about the franchise, such as the recently released Resident Evil 4 remake, I'd be happy to do that. Just, give me some of your opinions. I would love to hear some discussion below. I always try to respond to every comment I get, and honestly, that's my favorite part of making a video, is the discussion afterwards. So, until next time, this is Red from Topic Change, signing off.